farming, writing, democracy, the steam engine. These are all things created by science. In Humankind, the ability to nuke people into oblivion because they didn't sign a non-aggression pact is really what we all use science for. Ooh. They just got obliterated. Hey everybody, I'm Pacific the Casual Gamer, and welcome to my first ever video on Humankind, and today is my complete guide on the research quarter, how I think you should use it, and all the infrastructure that comes along with it. Now let's say you're brand new to the game. What exactly is a research quarter? It's exactly what you think it is. It just produces science for you. Particularly the way that I use it is I try to get science from other sources so that I don't have to spend time building research quarters. But usually I use it if I'm behind on tech, if I want to do a strategy where I rush technology, or I have nothing else to build and I just feel like producing more science. Now, unlike the farmer's quarter and the maker quarter, which you build a ton of, the research quarter, unless it's a special kind from a civilization, doesn't get any adjacency bonuses at all. So you have to really focus on building them in a cluster around each other. We all know it's to keep the nerds away from the normal people.
Oh my god, what did they get?
What didn't they get? I got my enchanted weapons, my vicious gladiator armor, my wand of untainted power.
Good luck, fellas. Oh, thank you, officer.
Wait a minute.
So that can conflict with other things, because if you want to build a cluster of research quarters, maybe you build it in a city where there's a bunch of food or industry production. You have to sacrifice one or the other, which is why attaching outposts is great. Research quarters are really good if you have a city that has a high amount of industry and you have a territory that, let's be honest, you really just claimed to pull a freaking Soviet Russia, and it's really just a buffer zone to keep your other cities safe, and so the other guy doesn't claim it. If I want to max out science, I will try as hard as I can to build them in only one or two cities. And once I start, if I decide, hey, this city's gonna be the science city, I do not build anything else in that city. Because, and you'll see later in the video, because of the infrastructure upgrades, a lot of them directly upgrade research quarters. And what that means is a research quarter in my science city, my nerd city, is way more valuable than just some random research quarter that I build somewhere else. Now, I won't build as many of these if I get the religious tenant that gives me 50 science per culture wonder. And if I have like 2 or 3 wonders, sometimes I fall behind on religion, so I might end up with 2 or 3 wonders before I get that. That's 150 science. That's a lot of science. And in games where I get that religious tenant and I usually end up building 4 or 5 wonders for some reason, I don't need research quarters. The only research quarters I ever end up building is the one that the Zao give you, and that's mostly because it's a stability bonus and a bunch of science in the early game. The first thing that I will always build, even though I might not have research quarters, I will still always build it, is the school, because you get 1+ science per population. So it's really nice, especially if you have an agrarian civilization, so one that focuses heavy on food, is it's kind of like you can build a school in every city and bring in as much food as possible. So it's kind of like an indirect science bonus for having a bunch of farmers' quarters, is that everyone gives a science. The library, I sometimes will build if I'm building a science city. And, basically all the tier 1 buildings I will end up building if I decide, hey, this city is going to go down the route of science. A particular thing that always gets me every time is the Alchemist Lab, because it's a percentage, and, I'm used to playing a lot of Civilization, which means anytime I see a percentage, I'm like, ooh, I gotta build that in everything, because everything produces everything. Most of the time, I might combine it with a school. If I have a heavy science city, of course, I'm gonna build an Alchemist Lab. But the whole percentage stuff, really, percentage of population-based buildings are great to build regardless of if you're building research quarters, but it's especially good if you are building a research quarter city. The hard thing with these percentages is the timing of things, because you might see, oh, this Alchemist Lab gives me 10% science. That's great. But if your city's producing, let's just say 30 science, you're only getting 3 science. And you could get 4 science if you have 1 research lab and you decide you're going to build another one next to it. So already you're kind of losing out. The university is one of the only buildings in a science-based city that I gun for. If I'm like, this city's gonna be science, I make sure to build a university, because essentially what it does is it just doubles your research quarters. It's a 1+ on the adjacency and a 3+ on the research quarter itself. So instead of the research quarter being 3 science for building it and 1 on adjacency, it's 6 and 2. That's really good because you're already building these clusters of them, and it just speeds up how much science you have to build. You literally have to build half the research quarters for the same result. The Cabinet of Curiosities is another one of those 1+ science per population buildings. If I'm at peace and my military strength is, at least if I were to defend, superior, so I'm not like worried about producing more soldiers, or maybe I have advanced soldiers, the Cabinet of Curiosities is the last research building that I really focus on. When I'm going through the tech tree in this game, and I'm not like super tech where every single age I research everything before I actually go into the next age. You know, if I've got like, you know, this happens to me all the time. I'm not focusing on science, and fishing and sailing aren't even researched because I decided to make a random world and it's no water to be seen anywhere. Like, why would I have fishing and sailing, right? The last really building that I go for is the Cabinet of Curiosities, because after the cabinet, I kind of feel like the value that you get from science buildings diminishes, right? Because like that school you built back in the day of ancient age is still producing science. The cabinet is producing more science, but if you look, the cabinet ends up producing like less science. The science is less valuable because you're in the middle of the game, you're nearing the end of the game, and in the end of the game, all that extra science you have, if you research every single technology, well, it goes to waste because you end the game, and fame is a thing, right? If you're playing a game where you don't even end the game when science happens, you're playing to last man standing, that makes the cabinet, I feel, less valuable because it's like Civilization, where you finish researching all the technologies and now you're not researching anything. All of your science is just sitting there going to waste. The Inventor's Workshop is a weird one because, yeah, it gives you an extra 10% science. And it gives you percentage of science based on saltpeter. And I feel like the only time this is good is when you have alliances and you can buy saltpeter off of other people, right? Because it's like, okay, most of the time I end up with 1 or 2 sources of saltpeter, so that's only a 14% buff, right? But if I can buy saltpeter off other people, maybe get 4, that's 18%. That's a lot more, you know? And by the time you get to Inventor's Workshop, and you have maybe a single science city, because I feel like at that point, the Inventor's Workshop is only good in your cities that are pure fucking nerds, right? Comic-Con is every single day in these cities, no matter the age. That's when it can give you a good buff. Other than that, I don't build it. I think I made like a science-based city one time and it was on the super fast mode, so I didn't even get to build anything, right? So I think I've maybe built 1 Inventor's Workshop in my entire life. With the House of Scribes, if you don't know what it does, it gives you more space for more researchers, okay? Which is really good if you have a science-focused sitting. House of Scribes and the printing house are both buildings that you do not build in a normal city. You only build if you're focusing on research. And unless I'm behind on technology, the printing house is something that I just will not build at all. I don't build it because it's like, if I'm behind on tech, then of course I need it because I need the tech, because I'm probably sitting here with muskets and the other guy has freaking riflemen and tanks, and well, you can't survive that. So you need the tech. And I mean, if you have a high enough population, that 2+ science per researcher can be really good. Especially, this is where you kind of get into the combo of things if you have the Alchemist House and the Inventor's Workshop, because then it's percentage based. So if you have enough saltpeter and you have the Alchemist and Inventor's Workshop, let's say, yeah, your percentage of science is 25% bonus from that. That means that every 2 scientists, because if you do the math, the printing house gives you 2+ science per researcher. Every 2 researcher, you have an additional 1 science, which can be really good. I mean, if you got a city with 20 researchers, let me do some math in my head quick. That's 2 science per researcher, so 20 researchers means you get 40 science. So you get an extra 10 science to 50 science. Hopefully, when I edit this, I write that on the screen. And basically, the rest of the science buildings, I never build them, right? contemporary era buildings, you're in the contemporary era. I don't know how you make it to the contemporary era without getting conquered and also having garbage science. Unless you like scientific osmosis somebody or some, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of situations. That's just not gonna happen. So by the time you have access to academies, which is another school thing, you get more science per population, and you have access to the contemporary era, I don't see you gunning for technologies to give you science. The only reason I could see you building contemporary era science buildings is if you have a good defensive position, you're ahead on fame, and you want to lock in the last technologies to basically end the game's timer, right? Because if you have more fame than someone else, let's say, I don't know, you're in a normal length game, you're like 2,000-3,000 fame ahead of someone, and you're at peace, and you have a strong military, that's a good reason to just say, fuck it, I'm gonna focus hard on science. Okay, I'm just gonna science it out because you're gonna lock in all the scientific fame bonus points first. You're gonna lock them in earlier than everyone else, which is gonna kind of artificially extend your lead. But if you end the game and your lead is artificially extended, it's still extended, right? So that's how you win. So that's kind of where I stand on the research quarter, all the infrastructure. You know, honestly, I feel like if you were to compare this to Civilization 6 with the Science District, I feel like the research quarter is a less impactful investment, okay? If you are going to invest in a research quarter though, unlike in Civilization where every single city has to build its own scientific district, you want to just focus it on 1 or 2 cities. You know, I don't really see a situation where you need to focus on more than 3. I think one time, if I remember correctly, I didn't play the ZOW, because if you play the ZOW, every city is going to have at least 1 scientific district per outpost because of the ZOW special building, which is a freaking overpowered district. I don't understand why people don't rate the ZOW higher. But if you don't do that, then you're going to have 1 or 2 cities with a research district. I've had 1 city where it's maxed out in research district, and I ended the game scientifically beyond anyone's understanding. I was 400 IQ, like exosuit. I think I had exosuit Spanish conquistadors against everyone who had like pikemen. They were stuck in the medieval age, and I exosuited Spanish conquistadors, and I was just fine. So yeah, that's it. That's my guide for the research quarter. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Do you end up using the research quarter? You know, and this is the game. This is Humankind. This is day 0. I'm sure that this video is going to become outdated, and I might have to make another one because the developers are like, hey, the science is not useful. We need to make it more useful. It needs to be more impactful. Boom. There you go. But guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm Pacific the Casual Gamer. Let me know if you want to see me cover a different kind of quarters. I'm eventually going to do all the quarters, but if you're here early, before I cover all of the quarters in Humankind, let me know what you want to see. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.
No, no.